Dating in my 30s was crappy. It took me 6 years to get remarried again.
I got set up on a first date with one of my best friend's acquaintances from her school. That was my first and only date. That's Matt Flynn, my husband now. Never planned on getting married. He was my first and only date post-divorce.
Social media convinces people that you can have terrible credit, be totally broke, and have none of your own money and go become this full-fledged real estate investor. I have not found that it's that easy.
Equity buffer, to me, is probably one of the most extremely important things to look at when evaluating a loan opportunity. Let's say, for example, you go out and buy your primary residence and you get a loan on it. Generally speaking, the bank is going to lend 80% loan to value. For us as private lenders, I like to keep my LTVs much more conservative.
You told me that you just got a new tattoo.
I did at the beginning of 2023, actually. I got on my forearm.
Ladies, on today's episode, we have Beth Pinkley Johnson, who, if you have not read her book, Lend to Live, is friggin' amazing. I read it. My book club for my women's mastermind read it. My husband's now reading it. So we highly recommend, if you are interested in private money lending and being that lender to people at all, this is a really good playbook. And if you aren't trying to be a private money lender, it's interesting if you're trying to get a lender to give you money to hear their perspective and see what they're looking for and what they're really considering when they're getting ready to potentially finance a deal that you're going to do. So I'm super excited to talk to Beth today, because not only is she going to tell us all about lending to live, we're also going to talk a little bit about her personal life, as well as she's going to be one of those speakers at our next retreat. So Beth, welcome to the show today. Okay, Beth. So if anybody's read your book, we know that you grew up with parents who were doing some flips back in like the 70s and 80s. And but you started out in the corporate world and decided to make a transition. So talk to us a little bit how you went from the process of seeing your parents in the real estate industry on some level to this great corporate career, and then making a total shift to real estate yourself.
Yeah, so I mean, it was quite I think for my parents, it was always a side hustle. And so I grew up just assuming that I was going to have to earn a living as in my day job, and then do real estate on the side. My parents espoused earning a really good, honest income, climbing the corporate ladder, or whatever professional endeavor that we wanted to pursue, saving up as much as possible, and then reinvesting it. And then that's the way that we would become wealthy in our later years, really impressing upon us that you couldn't just have a job and save and earn and really elevate and level up in your wealth and your generational wealth that you can provide your children.
And so after you've gone through this corporate job and you've had a little bit of a, I don't even know if we'd call it midlife, because you were pretty young, crisis, you decided to make some changes. Talk to us about that.
Sure. Well, I mean, I don't know. I think late 30s is definitely young, but it wasn't super young at the time. And so when I found myself becoming a single mom and experiencing a divorce that I wasn't really planning on, of course, I don't think any of us plan on it. I was having to start a new chapter in my life and wasn't really focused on, reestablishing, this new career or starting my own business. I just wanted to get back on my feet again, figure out how I could take care of kids by myself, earn a living, but still be present for them first and foremost. So I happened into private lending and getting back into real estate completely by chance, just going on a first date with my now husband. And we bonded over real estate. And that's just, how it went from there. But I think that being open to whatever opportunities presented themselves to me is what created this chance endeavor of running a private lending business with him. I was always, like I said, planning on doing this as a side hustle, investing in real estate, owning rentals, doing flips, but very much doing it after hours and on the weekends. So kind of opening myself up and having this midlife crisis allowed me to experience an opportunity that I probably would never have really looked at. And, if I had just continued this trajectory of, relationship, marriage, kids, climbing the corporate ladder.
It's interesting that you say that because I feel like there's a lot of women in our country that go through divorce. They always say the divorce rate's like 50% or something, right? So there's a ton of us who've been in that situation. And I was also married for almost 10 years, and my ex husband had an affair when I was 8 months pregnant with our third child. And I was going through those same emotions. And it's not just, holy crap, how am I going to support all these kids by myself? It's the day to day that you're doing by yourself. It's your identity. You're thought of yourself as this family. And then you start having to identify as this like single mom that you never imagined being when you were pregnant and getting ready to raise these kids and playing mom and dad. And then also dating. You don't imagine being this single mom of little kids and like dating, right? And I don't know about you, but for me, dating in my 30s was crappy and sucked. It took me like 6 years to get remarried again. But talk to us a little bit about what you were going through during that phase.
Okay, I'm not gonna lie to you, Heather. Was not interested in dating at all. Obviously, I had just gotten a divorce. My ex-husband really it sort of just drained the life out of me. He tried his hardest, but he was unemployed off and on for almost 4 years. There was a lot of dynamics there that, I just wanted to decompress and have fun. I thought if I could just maybe hang out with somebody who didn't yell at me or cause me a lot of emotional duress, I was winning. And so, but I was afraid of this whole online dating thing. So I just thought maybe just to signify a new chapter in my life, I would ask somebody to set me up with somebody they knew. And then it would be some random off the internet that might, uh, turn sideways or worse, or be, like I'd end up on Dateline. And so I got set up on a first date with one of my best friends, um, acquaintances from her school, and that was my first and only date. That's Matt Flynn, my husband now. Never
Oh,
planned on getting married. He was my first and only date post divorce. It was like a month or two after my divorce was official. And, been separated for quite some time. I wasn't looking for anything serious, let alone to start a business with some guy that was going to eventually be my husband. It was completely random.
I love that story. Okay, so what about that one date? Obviously, it's probably more than one date, but that one person, like the only date you'd been on, convinced you to get married.
Well, it didn't. We were never going to get married. After 2.5 years, we made the important decision to really decide whether or not we were going to blend our families together and move in together. To me, that was a much, much more uh, delicate matter to sort through. Blending our children, would we be able to co-parent each other's children like our own? Would this total blended family environment work? And to me, commitment's a state of mind. It's not a contract. Clearly, I had an opportunity to walk away from a marriage, which I made a covenant before God, before government. It was recorded with the county, and it still didn't end well for me. And so, I think the decision to blend our families together was the first and foremost. So we decided to get together thinking that we would be life partners, we would run a business together, but it was never really that important for us to remarry. And I think I was a little short sighted in understanding the long range of effects it might have on my kids, not having like, a name for Matt, like calling him, my mom's boyfriend or something like that, like we're, 22. So it just really kind of happened that way, but it really wasn't on our radar to get married. I think what I fell in love with Matt was the levity that he brought to my life. I was such a serious person growing up, and in my younger adulthood, wanting to follow a very specific rigid path. I had really over engineered my life, like I was going to climb the corporate ladder, I was going to get married, I was going to have 2.5 kids, I was going to do real estate on the side, we were going to be this power couple, and then my whole world comes crashing down on me at 38, and I just want to have like companionship, like a connection, some way to release stress and enjoy life with somebody who, and Matt brought that to me. And so I think that's what carried us on. We were both trying to sabotage the relationship forever, thinking that, this was just first relationship after the divorce. It wasn't going to go anywhere. But I think that my seriousness was good for him. his levity that he brought and the view that he had on the world changed how I see things, and really gave me an opportunity to embrace this second chance for sure.
Okay, so it's interesting the way you're wording this because we just did a thing on Instagram, and I say we as in me and my team posted this reel, and it was for like single women ask a question, married women answer it. And there were a lot of girls on there who were saying, I live with my boyfriend. I don't see it's necessary to just like have this piece of paper saying that we're legal. Like, I don't understand the point of getting married, which sounds like exactly where you were. So, I know you said you wanted like a title for your kids, but talk to us a little bit more about your decision thinking, like the process you were thinking through when you're like, okay, just being married and be like calling him my boyfriend isn't where I want to be. We're going to progress to like actually being married.
Well, again, we didn't really plan on getting married, and it wasn't something that was premeditated. He had a medical issue. I had insurance still because we had started Flynn Family Lending as a side hustle. I was still doing a day job doing consulting at a tech firm here in the greater Seattle area. And so we ended up flying to Vegas that same week, just the two of us, getting married in secret at the Stratosphere, and hit the poker tables, of all things, as soon as we got married, and flew home that night and kind of kept it a secret for a couple of years. Our attorney
Oh
knew,
my
our
gosh, for
CPA
years.
knew. No one knew because it wasn't like I kept telling people I was never going to get married. It was not necessary. So we didn't really feel compelled to come out just broadly share with everyone, including our kids. Total bad miss there in hindsight. We've had to rectify that with them after they found out and we let them know. But at the time, it just really wasn't anything more than a logistical change because we'd already been living together for a couple of years and had completely blended our lives together. Aside from having shared bank accounts, we ran a business together. We were actively involved in each other's children's lives. We were definitely a blended family of five.
It's interesting that you say that. So you've started your business as a side hustle, and I want to hear because I know a lot of people who are investing in real estate, and they're either interested in having a private lender or they want to be a private lender, and they hear like the buzzwords because it's been even more popular over the last few years as interest rates have gone up, and there's a lot of talk about it. You see tons of social media videos, but no one ever really talks about how you get through that first, second, and third step. They're like, okay, I found someone I want to invest in their deal, or I found a deal and I need money. Now what? So, talk us through that process of when you're considering investing in a deal, what do you do?
Well, the interesting thing is that when you want to be able to be that passive investor, private lending in someone else's project, you're the most important, like you're the most popular person in the room. When you have money, there's plenty of investors that want to share their deal and have you invest in their project as a lender. So the act of finding one is not very difficult. You can go to local meetups and do that. But where the rubber really hits the road is really ensuring that you underwrite that deal as if you were an investor yourself. So the transition from an active investor to a private lender to me is very seamless because you're underwriting that deal very similarly like you would have if you were going to entertain it as a flipper or a buy and hold investor. If you don't have any net experience in real estate investing, it might be a bit challenging because then you have to learn two competencies, right? You have to learn how to underwrite projects as an investor and a lender, and then you have to understand the whole mechanics of lending on a project. And so that's what we try to spell out in the book is what are all the key considerations that you would need to take when that project opportunity is presented to you to become a private lender on. So some of the most important things that you're going to want to look at is the borrower, their character, their cash position, and their capacity to execute a project. But then you also want to look at the property and the project itself. Does it look viable? Is there enough healthy margin in there to protect you in case something goes sideways? And then you want to truly understand all the paperwork involved. And that includes both of the paperwork that you're going to ask the borrower to provide you, and then the legal paperwork that you would work with an attorney on to prepare and protect your principal investment in that project. So the loan documents, generally. So we call that the CPR lending system in the book, covers, the the C's are all that each step to finding and funding a private lending opportunity. The P is covering both the property, the project, the paperwork, and the person. And then the R is covering off on all the risks as well as the rewards associated with completing each step effectively. So there's a lot, it sounds simple. There's a lot of legwork up front, but once you actually find that project and property and person that you want to invest in and lend on, and you feel very confident before you fund that deal in terms of the viability of that project, then it becomes more passive and you to get what we'd call mailbox money.
Because this has become such a popular thing and there's not a ton of education out there on it, I feel like a lot of people use some of these words interchangeably. They talk about hard money lenders, they talk about private money lenders, they talk about syndications, they talk about funds. And when I'm getting emails from people asking me to invest in their deals, I see the structure on some of these look very similar. And from my perspective, if I'm coming into someone's deal and I'm bringing most, if not all, of the money, and they're kind of new as an operator, or maybe they've done a deal or two, or they're going into a new asset class, what percentage should I be looking for? And I get that this is the Wild West. Like, it's not like a bank loan where everything's like spelled out and pretty standard. For you, for example, when you're looking at this, what percentage of the deal are you looking to own? And how are you looking at some of those different terms?
Equity buffer, and we measure that in terms of LTV or loan to value, to me is probably one of the most extremely important things to look at when evaluating a loan opportunity. Let's say, for example, you go out and buy your primary residence and you get a loan on it. Generally speaking, the bank is going to lend 80% loan to value, meaning you need to put down a 20% down payment and then they'll fund the rest. For us as private lenders, because work is going to be done on the project, because some things just go sideways sometimes and nobody really ever has any control over it, even though they have the best of intentions, I like to keep my LTVs much more conservative. So we look at, generally speaking, like a 70% loan to value. And this is all, I kind of say as private lenders, it depends because you really need to look at the project and the execution of it to really determine what feels comfortable to you. But if you have a 65 to 70% loan to value, that gives you a fairly large cushion. But what I see happening recently is that there's a lot of what we call gap funding. Projects just aren't penciling out the way that they want to. And there's a lot more forums out there that are really popularizing real estate investing as an investment strategy out there. And they may or may not have the capital to be able to sufficiently fund that deal. So they're going out and getting a hard money loan and then trying to find private lenders like you and myself to fund that gap. The challenge I have in that is that there is no equity buffer, and then the borrower themselves have no skin in the game. And you see that in JV deals, you see that in syndication deals that you might want to invest in as an LP. What is the capital stack on there? If I invest as an LP, I'm still going behind some senior debt, some very large senior debt. So what are the GPs putting in there? And who's getting paid out first, right? If I'm going to be lending on a project and providing the down payment and the rehab, but they're going to go out and get a hard money loan at 85% loan to value, and I'm funding that 15% plus rehab, what's my protection? If they make one or two missed payments with that hard money loan, and now that hard money loan is charging them 18 or 24% default interest, and it's still down to the studs, what is going to protect me? And so that's why we like to keep the LTVs, excruciatingly low, especially when you're first starting out. You want to have a lot of protection in the property itself to safeguard you against any novice mistakes you might make.
So I'm glad you're saying this because I feel like social media convinces people that you can have terrible credit, be totally broke, have no experience, and have none of your own money and go become this full fledged real estate investor. And that people are going to give you money to be either a partner or a private money lender. And I have not found that it's that easy. There's clearly people with that story, but it's interesting to hear you as a professional private money lender. You literally wrote the book on it. say those aren't the type of deals that I want to do. They're too risky.
Well, I mean, I feel like I'm always out there trying to be the counterpoint. There are so many headlines out there that just want to draw you in, and they're with the best of intentions, right? We're trying to highlight some of those really stellar success stories. And while that might happen to one individual, you know, six figures on one flip, how I got to 100 doors in 2 years with no cash out, those are the exceptions. And so I really want to come out there and say, you know, especially to women too, because I feel like we can get drawn in by what we see in social media. You're just seeing the top tip of the iceberg. You have no idea what's beneath. So the woman is posting out there all these beautiful vacation photos. You don't know that she may be struggling at home with a personal identity crisis or struggling in a relationship. Just like with these real estate investing headlines out there, it may sound super sexy and cool that they're accomplishing these things, but are we really doing the due diligence to understand what the potential complications are of them? They're just showing their shining moments. They're not really exposing some of the bad things that have happened to them, which are, you know, basically a lesson learned or word of caution to other people. Those don't sell books. Those don't sell, you know, a coaching package or anything like that. So I try to come out as much as possible and share what are all of the downsides as well as what's the upside, which is why in the book we have the R in there of the CPR lending. It really focuses on the risks and the rewards. Because there's no reward if you take on too much risk and it goes sideways, right? I just want to make sure that everyone is fully aware that there's, you know, risk and adversity in every single deal that we might enter into. And it's always upon us to really go and sort through the details to make sure that it feels good to us. Let's just not get so enamored by these stories that we think it's super easy and we get FOMO, right? Like as most women do. But we just want to put our money out there and deploy it immediately so that we can say that we're earning passive income, and they're maybe missing several extra key due diligence steps because they're just so excited to get their money out there so they can say they are.
And I think this is a really good point because even me, I own almost 300 units. I've been doing this for 13 years and I still have deals that are like, holy crap, what did we get into? And that's not because I don't know what I'm doing or I didn't underwrite it properly or any of those things. When the market changes, when you find a foundation has some type of repair that you didn't know it was going to need to, like you get into these deals and there is a level of risk. I'm grateful I have a large enough portfolio and I don't have any investors that when one deal isn't working out for the short term, my other deals make up for it. And then that one, eventually gets turned around or sold or whatever we do with it. But when you're in this situation that you're talking about, if you don't have that cushion, where is that money going to come from? Because it's probably you as the lender, because they didn't have any other money to finish it up.
Yeah, I mean, it's a matter of velocity too. Why do we have to feel like there's such a need for speed here? I tend to prefer the slow cooker approach to all of my real estate investments. I want to earn just enough. I want to play just enough. I want to work just enough. There are limitations that we all need to recognize within ourselves that may be different. You were able to get up to 300 doors and still, I mean, kind of absorb some of the issues and the risks. But the reality is for me, I got to like 40 or 50 and I'm like, I can't do this anymore. This is not fun for me. I have to run a business. I have 3 children that I need to look after. I have my own mental well-being I need to look after. When can I say that I've had enough doors? And am I really setting like egotistical goals for myself because I have to
It's
have some sort of
100%
false
that.
measurement, you
Yes.
know?
I'm so glad you're wording it that way because before I got on social media, I had actually never, because clearly you're more of a numbers person than I am. I love the operations side of it, but I don't like obsess over the numbers. And so I had to go through and like count how many units I had. And I'm like, how much all this is worth. I'd never thought of it from this perspective until I had to like start teaching on stage about it. Ooh, I have 300 doors. It's like $30 million. Like I never thought of it that way. But if you go to a conference, it's like people's badge of honor that they're like wearing on their shirt, how many doors they have and how many millions of dollars it is. And I think everybody has different goals. And this kind of brings us to another topic that you and I were talking about before we started recording. And like knowing yourself and what it is that you want out of life, unrelated to, because for me, it's so much fun to operate the deals and have the team that it doesn't bother me to keep doing that. I'm about to have my fifth child, and my kids go to all my stuff with me, and we love it as a family. But that doesn't need to be everyone else's goal. Like learning to be unapologetically yourself and step aside and be like, what do I want? Not what all these people on the internet have told me I want, not what society tells me I want, not what the media is saying right now. What makes me happy? Because that is actually what the goal is. And maybe it's more time with your family. Maybe it's traveling the world on vacations. Maybe it's whatever we can come up with, right? And so when you and I started talking about this, you told me that you just got a new tattoo.
I did. The beginning of 2023, actually, I got on my forearm unapologetic with a big fat period at the end of it. And that was just to serve as a reminder to myself that I needed to start putting myself first and really honoring who I am and what it is that drives me, not trying to feel as though I need to serve other people in order to receive their love and respect, which is something that is a huge lesson that I've had to learn over the last 10 years. My world came crashing down on me at the age of 38, realizing I'm a, twice divorced mother of two, feeling like really, how the hell did I get here? And then having an opportunity to have a second chance. But then this grows into a full fledged business. And prior to the business, I was working part time as a tech consultant for 8 years. So as soon as my son was born, I just knew I had it in me to be a mom first. I had lost my mom at an early age, early 30s. And so I really wanted to be there for my kids like she was there for me. So personally, I had to realize over the last 10 years that I identify myself first and foremost by me and my personal endeavors, not by my professional endeavors. And when I found myself launching the book with Bigger Pockets, I was thrust into this limelight that, I mean, that's great. I'm appreciative of the opportunities afforded to me, especially that my co-author brought to me this book opportunity to share a lot of my experiences. But if I'm feeling guilty day in and day out, like I'm not there for my kids, if I'm setting artificially all these goals, which by the way happen to be like almost 100% professional and none of them personal, right? And then I'm stressed all the time to the hill. And then I rebound because I'm a survivor and I never gonna quit. And then I come crashing down again because it's not sustainable. At what point in time do I put myself first and honor the fact that when I'm going up there on stage like you and I have, all of these things about what I do, how many doors, my business, how much I produce, does that really define me? And then the very bottom one is about, being a mom of three kids, a blended family of five, traveling, cooking, singing, running. I don't do any of those anymore. So I just feel like a shell of a human being. I just had to recognize that I'm not built like other women out there who run businesses and they just go gonzo on it. And they have all the energy in the world and they don't have the anxiety levels that I do, and they identify themselves with their professional endeavors, and I think that's wonderful and amazing, but I'm just not that person. So that tattoo is a reminder to myself that I need to put myself first. I'm the only one that's going to do that, and it's unapologetic about everything. This is what I need, this is what I want, and I'm going to do it now.
So I'm so glad that we're having this conversation because I feel like a lot of people need to hear it. They have these emotions and these feelings, but they're never verbalized. And how old are your kids now?
Oof, my 16-year-old just started driving this
Oh my
week solo
gosh.
by himself. My daughter turned 12 yesterday, and then I have a 21-year-old bonus daughter.
Okay. So this year, my oldest turned 12, and I started thinking, oh my gosh, I only have 6 more summers with her. It's
Mhm.
so easy when you're a young mom, and whether it's your first child or you're in the heat of it and you're having multiple kids and they're all little, to feel like you have forever and that like it's going to be this like long forever life, that they're little and they're at home and you're feeding them and you're taking care of them. But when you start thinking, oh my gosh, I only have 6 summers left, or I only have, so, and I say left, obviously, they're not like disappearing, but the statistics on how often you see your kids after they're 18 years old and move out of the house, and if they decide to live in another state or another country, you know, it's really tough. And so you don't want to look back on those years and feel like, holy crap, I did not prioritize my family enough during those years. Those kids are only little for so long.
I lost my mom when I was 32. I was not planning on raising a family without her present. And I have three older brothers and an older sister. My mom met all of their children. Mine were the only ones that she didn't meet. So it really very much was a slap in the face, to be more realistic about what it meant to me to be a mom. And I just had to finally realize over the last decade of being a business owner and a mom, you don't have to do it all. I mean, that's wonderful that there's a lot of women out there saying lean into this and you can have it all and 10x that. That's fine. That works for them. But what works for me and my high levels of anxiety that I only discovered when I ran a business, and then I realized there's so much at stake, particularly when I'm lending out other people's capital and I have so much of it to manage and safeguard. My anxiety, my identity, that's worth way more. And I'm not going to go to my grave and say, like, I'm not going to put author on my tombstone. I don't care about that. I want to educate and provide value to other people. I'm proud of the book that I wrote. I think it's very important for people wanting to get into this space, but it doesn't define who I am. And that's okay. I just want to be the best mother and support to my children and make sure that they can grow up and take care of themselves too and be independent and have passion and purpose so that they don't come into their middle age like me trying to figure out, like, oh, who am I now? Like, how do I define myself? That's not a pleasant place to be in. So my first and foremost job is to be there for them.
I love that. Thank you, Beth, for being so open and honest and vulnerable with us today, talking about a little more than your real estate journey. If people are looking to follow you and learn more about being a private money lender, how do they find that information?
You can follow me on Instagram at lend2live.beth. That's lend, the number two, live.beth. I have a website where you can learn more about private lending. It's lend2live.com. And I'm on Facebook, Beth Pinkley Johnson. My companies are Flynn Family Lending and Lend to Live. So you can check me out there.
Thanks, Beth. I appreciate your time today.